what is quality education? Why do we need to have quality education? And how can we ensure that we provide quality education? These are questions that we will explore in the context of education in Pakistan. So first, what is quality education? In a broader general global discourse, quality education has been explored, identified as an important goal of the process of education, and UNESCO's Sustainable Development Goal 4 mentions quality education as an important indicator of the process of education. And this goal 4 actually explains the concept of quality education in with several characteristics. So first of all, education is considered as quality education where we have access for all children to relevant and inclusive education. Secondly, quality education is education that goes beyond rote memorization or drill learning to the development of critical thinking skills and practical skills, practical literacy and numeracy skills on the part of students. Thirdly, quality education is education which focuses on the provision of good infrastructure in educational institutions. Besides, another important indicator of quality education is actually the availability of professionally trained teachers, appropriate materials that is used in educational settings, and safe environment. So these are some of the characteristics of that are important for giving quality education to students. Besides this, another important characteristic of quality education is basically the relevance of the educational process to real life. So education should not take place in a vacuum. The process of education should actually extend its impact and its process basically to real life, that is life in the society and the economy in which the education is taking place. Now, further in the Pakistani context, generally the Constitution of Pakistan obliges the state or expects the state to provide free and compulsory quality education to children aged 5 to 16. So free and compulsory is an important aspect of the term quality education. So overall we can say that quality education implies not just being enrolled in school for students, but learning, actual learning, authentic learning, or meaningful learning. That actually means, so how can that happen? That can happen when educational institutions have adequate facilities, trained teachers, and most importantly, a curriculum and evaluation process that fits for the purpose. So if the purpose of education is fulfilled overall, we could say that quality education is taking place. But we also need to make sure that the purposes are clear and the purposes of education are actually in line with the requirements and expectations of the society. Unfortunately, in the Pakistani context, many children generally, even after getting education in our educational institutions, they do not essentially get or acquire basic literacy and numeracy skills. So now the why question, why is it important that we should focus on quality education? In Pakistan so far, for example, the focus is on improving literacy rates. or you can say the massification of the educational process. But most importantly, there are other factors that we need to look at in order to ensure that we have quality education. So first of all, quality education actually helps in the human development and social mobility. In Pakistan, we rank it 164th out of the 193 countries on the Human Development Index, which is like a worrying fact. Pakistan is one of the biggest countries population-wise in the world, and this number, this ranking is kind of sad reality. Secondly, it is important because literacy and educational attainment affects health, gender equality, and it helps in poverty reduction. Thirdly, if the quality of education is not good, generally such education will fail to enable children to improve their lives and to contribute productively to the society. So we can say that quality education is important because good quality education helps in developing in human development and helps people in social mobility, going out of the poverty and improving their lives. Now, secondly, quality education is important because it helps in economic growth and labor market relevance. So education that helps, that is quality, will help people become economically independent, and it will help us in making the process of education relevant to the labor market, or what type of skills are actually required in the market. So again, about 55% of Pakistan's population is under 24 years of age. Out of the total population, as per the 2022 census, 229 million. It's much more than this right now. So if we want to harness this big youth bulge, we need to think how actually young people who can think, adapt, and work in an evolving economy. So poor quality education actually means that we can actually waste this huge potential. Next, quality education is important because it helps in equity, in bringing in equity to the society, in developing social justice, and in gender parity. So again, many children remain out of school. This is like one of the biggest problems. So equal access is one of the characteristics of quality education, and this is something that is missing geographically in geographically various areas of the country. According to the latest numbers, around 25 million children, and many say it's now around 28 million children, aged between 5 to 16 are not enrolled. This is actually 35% of this age group in Pakistan. Literacy rates differ widely, and so there is urban-rural divide. For example, in literacy rate generally in urban is in the 70s versus rural in the 50s. Province-wise, also there is lack of equity, social justice, where certain provinces such as Punjab has the highest literacy rate, followed by Sindh and KP, and lastly we have Balochistan at the very bottom. In terms of gender parity, we also have problems, and so that's why we need quality education. Girls generally and marginalized groups, they suffer from lower access to education and from poor quality of education. So actually what we can conclude from this is that quality education is needed in order to ensure equity, social justice, and gender parity, And in order to bridge these divides, these gender divides, these social divides, economic divides, and so on. Further, why do we need to have quality education? It is important because the quality crisis, for example, the federal policy documents estimate that 5%, around 5% of children in Pakistan are receiving good quality education. That actually means 95% of the children are not receiving quality education. So now that is a big issue, and so that actually means that huge resources and efforts are not yielding proportionate societal benefits. So again, the other factor because of which we need to have quality education is that it helps in infrastructure and in the improvement of infrastructure and basic amenities. Again, the problem is that only 47% of public schools have had all 5 essential, according to certain reports. I have given some references towards the end. You can find links to those reports. So have all 5 basic essential facilities such as electricity, water, toilets, boundary wall, safe building. And so this actually means that these are facilities that are missing in a majority of the educational institutions. So how can actually we ensure quality education without the basic infrastructure? That is something that is an open question. And because of the lack of these basic facilities, the quality suffers. Now, how? How can we actually help improve the quality of education in Pakistan? So first of all, we need to increase investment and allocate better resources and more resources. So the international benchmark, for example, recommends that we should have around 4% of the GDP, at least 4% of the GDP should be spent on education. In Pakistan, this is not the case. It is much less than this. And so education spending as a percentage of the GDP revolved around 2% in 2018-19, and you can say it was reduced further to 1.5 to 1.7% in the early 20s, and now the projected GDP ratio is 0.8% in the 2024-25, which is quite alarming. So the less you are spending on education, the quality will ultimately go down. So what we need to do is to improve the quality. More funding is important for infrastructure, for teacher training, for learning, for provision of learning materials, for provision of quality environments in education institutions, for better monitoring and evaluation, and for curriculum reform. So what we need to do is we need to improve infrastructure in school environments. We need to ensure that all schools, or most schools, if not all schools, meet basic facility standards. We need to build or upgrade rural remote areas. We need to make sure safe and inclusive environment, especially for girls or women. And we need to improve student-teacher ratio because lack of teachers and overcrowding classes will affect the quality of education. Further, there should be focus on teacher quality and pedagogy. There is a saying that says that if you want to see the condition of a nation, see the condition of the teacher. And I could say that if you want to see the condition or the quality of an education system, one of the most important factors is the quality of pedagogy and the quality of the teacher. What we need to do in order to improve this is basically to provide opportunities for continuous professional development of teachers. We need to have trained teachers who know their roles and the requirements of the profession of teaching. We need to have teacher certification programs. We need to have mentorships. and we need to incentivize good teaching so that teachers who teach well dedicatedly are actually rewarded. And also we need to monitor attendance and performance of teachers, for example, who are not doing well. And so there should also be punishments for those type of lack of professionalism. Besides this, in order to improve the situation of quality education, we need to have curriculum reform and learning outcomes. Curriculum reform has been taking place and now more rapidly, but we are still unable to develop our curriculum on a level where we can deal with the long-standing issues of education in Pakistan, such as the focus on rote memorization and the production of facts and figures, to change the education system to something that actually focuses on the development of critical thinking of students, their problem-solving skills. We also need to develop digital skills among our students. And so we also need to improve the reading and writing in general literacy skills, mathematical skills of our students. So the action that we need to do is to review the curriculum to adopt competency-based approaches rather than memory-based approaches, or you can say top-down approaches. We need to do the bottom-up approaches to the teaching and learning process in the classrooms. We need to integrate information and communication technology in our educational systems, and we need to standardize assessments so that, and also we need to authenticate the process of assessments. We need to monitor outcomes, and we need to use empirical data in order to develop our education system. Besides this, an important aspect of quality education basically is equity and access. So currently, as I mentioned in the presentation before, that around 25 million children are out of school, and there are provinces where this percentage of out of school children is quite high, and such as in Balochistan and in Sindh. So we need to deal with this. The action that we could do is to initiate programs where we enroll and retain children, especially girls, children in the remote areas, and we could have to improve. We could actually provide conditional cash transfers, flexible schooling models for children who need to work besides their schooling, and we need to have outreach programs to the community so that we can involve the community in the process of quality education. So accessibility, safety, and inclusivity are things that we need to ensure in order to improve the quality of education. Besides this, governance, accountability, and monitoring are important steps. This action that we need to do is to strengthen education management information system to monitor teacher attendance and to monitor school performances, to provide autonomy and accountability at the provincial and district level. Besides this, in many cases, private sector education institutions are doing a good job. So in many cases, not entirely, but in many cases, we could think of private-public partnership and innovation. So what we can do is that we can promote vocational and technical education. We can take the assistance and specialization of the private educational institutions in order to help grow and improve our public sector educational institutions in many ways. We should also help our education institutions to align the curricula with the job markets. strengthen linkages between education and industry. And then, importantly, focus on early childhood education. ECE currently is available to around 32% of primary schools in Pakistan. And early years, as we know, that are quite important in ensuring the quality of education that children get at later stages. So that is why good quality early education helps in the promotion of children. Their cognitive and social development is often dependent on that, and so that is something that is very important. So we need to expand ECE. We need to train teachers in early years pedagogy, ensure readiness for primary schools. Lastly, we need to involve the community and the people, the social groups in the process of quality enhancement. So in many cases, children have, especially girls, have cultural barriers. What we need to do is to engage parents and community, create awareness about the value of education. We need to ensure schools are close to communities, or schools are actually open to communities so that communities can engage. We need to make education safe for girls, and we need to have flexible schedules in difficult areas. We also need to align education with future needs. Relevance to economy is something that matters. So we need to develop research output in STEM, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics education. And so we need to develop these areas further. So the tertiary education or the university education is something that we need to develop further. We need to connect that to our primary educational institutions, and the tertiary educational system or institutions need to be connected to the industry, or you can say the work life. That is something